Hey, We Rise. Good evening. It's Brittany Weissman. I'm CEO of NAMI, Greater Los Angeles County. So excited to bring this program to you tonight. NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. We provide education, support, and community for everyone affected by mental health challenges. And we've been so excited to participate in We Rise with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health for the couple of years it's already been in place. We're thrilled to be part of it tonight to co-produce a program on what it's like to live with a mental health condition during COVID. Youth are taking an increasing role of leading the conversation of the day and taking action on really important issues, mental health being one of them. So we're really proud to bring you this diverse panel that's going to explore these themes with a actress, DeWanda Wise, who's also a NAMI ambassador. Thrilled to partner with We Rise, really excited to continue the conversation. Don't let this be the end of your action and your advocacy and your compassionate ears. What will change the game for us ultimately is normalizing the conversation around mental health and mental illness and making it okay to disclose and to talk about and find help for and care for each other. I really hope you pay attention tonight and come away with some skills and techniques to cope, and also keep listening to the We Rise programming, keep checking in with the DMH website, and check us out at namiglac.org. Have a great night, and without further ado, DeWanda.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
As always, I'm super honored that you've let us into your living rooms, probably bedrooms, maybe a bathroom or two. We're not judgy. I'm DeWanda Wise. These are my new friends. And this is Breaking the Stigma, brought to you by We Rise LA and NAMI GLAC. We Rise is a project of the Department of Mental Health made especially and specifically for you, literally you. It's a recognition that most social movements are youth driven. They always have been. They probably will continue to be. And We Rise hopes to continue to give you the resources to, speak truth to power and get out in the streets and when we're allowed to do so and activate your activism. We're here to defy old assumptions about mental health and mental illness. And both NAMI and We Rise are bringing services and resources to our communities. And personally, I cannot think of a better way to spend Mental Health Awareness Month 2020. Can you? Why I'm here specifically, as some of you know, not all, but I've been living with depression since I was very small, very small. And I still remember what it feels like to hear the word depression and understand it for the first time. It felt like just this sense of relief, that I wasn't the only one who was navigating these very specific physiological and emotional things that I was going through. And I'm sure we'll dive a little bit more into my own personal experience as we go along this evening. First, though, I'm going to pass the mic, metaphorically, to one of our amazing panelists, a comedian, an entrepreneur, and a literal beauty queen. We've got Brenda Saraí Zuñiga.
What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Hope you guys are doing awesome. A little bit about me. As DeWanda was saying, I'm a comedian. I'm also a singer, dancer, actor, entrepreneur. I have my own mindfulness coaching business called Sweet Thoughts Travel, and I help my clients develop a more balanced perspective on life, calm the mind, calm anxiety, reduce stress, and I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm also a NAMI presenter for two of their programs, Ending the Silence program and their In Our Own Voice program, and so excited to get to talk to all of you.
So dope, very cool. Next, we've got economics, theater, and Spanish grad from Harvard, Angelique Henderson.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's safe out there. Thank you so much for joining in on this panel. I'm Angelique Henderson. I'm an actress and substitute teacher in Los Angeles. As DeWanda said, I studied economics, theater, and Spanish at Harvard, and I just love sharing my experiences with depression and anxiety to help other people find ways to empower themselves along their journey.
Amazing. Thank you, Angelique. And finally, we have Ross Kwong. Ross is presently studying applied theology at California Baptist University. Please introduce yourself to the good people, Ross.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to just start with not being sure why I'm on this panel in general. Like, I've just with such qualified people from Harvard, comedians, actors, and I'm just a student. So let me introduce myself. My name's Ross, and yeah, I study at Cal Baptist. On the weekends, I work as a server at a Korean barbecue restaurant. I've been struggling with depression for over 14 years, and it took probably 8-9 years before I started to admit that I struggled with depression and I seeked for help. So I just hope to share my story, and I hope to be helpful for any of you guys who are listening. Yeah.
Ross will hopefully be ruling us all one day. We need good leadership. So I love your humility. However, please tell us what to do. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you all out there at home. One of my favorite coping mechanisms, especially and specifically right now, is playing games. You know, especially when I'm tired of like talking about, or when I feel especially heavy from the news. One of them I'm playing is called We're Not Really Strangers. That was not a plug. I'm playing We're Not Really Strangers because sometimes it's hard to figure out what to talk about. So we're gonna start off with a little game. I'm gonna ask a question. It's gonna pop up on the screen, and then you can cast your vote through live chat to play along. First one, we got it up. Okay. 1 in 5 Americans is affected by mental health illness in their lifetime. 1 in 5 Americans is affected by mental health illness in their lifetime. Is it 1 true or 2 false? Are any of you, Angelique, you're probably a good test taker. I was a horrible test taker. True and false was my jam, though.
Right. 50-50 chance of getting it right.
All right, we got the answer coming. It is true.
Oh,
1 in 5. Does that feel high? I'm gonna ask the second one and we're gonna talk about the first one. Okay, the second question is, what is the average delay between the onset of mental illness and treatment? Is it 1, 3 years, 2, 6 years, or 3, 11 years? So 1 in 5, does that surprise us? I feel like it surprises me because sometimes, I mean, I think that depression, anxiety can cause like a bit of a tunnel vision, and you forget that there's like a world of people experiencing the same thing. You know, it can feel really like lonely and isolating. So 1 in 5 feels high to me.
Yeah.
We're all connected, man. We're all a lot more alike than we are different. 100%.
Yeah.
And to me, that makes me feel comforted in a way.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm not alone. And I didn't mention earlier, but I have ADHD. And before I was diagnosed with ADHD, I suffered from depression and anxiety because I couldn't execute all these grand ideas that I had in my head. I would have so much attention in so many different areas and then get distracted, and my executive functioning skills were just not active. And that's
so
what
it's
it is.
like compounded, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, 11 years. The average delay between the onset of mental illness and treatment is 11 years. Let's pop up the next question and then we'll tackle that. 11 years. Third question is, what percentage of lifetime mental illness begins by age 14? Is it 1, 25%? Is it 2, 50%? Or is it 3, 75%? Man, how long did it take all of you between your diagnosis and, for you to actually seek or receive treatment?
I was just diagnosed last year. I'm 20, not last year, sorry, 2 years ago. I'm 27 and I was diagnosed at 25, but ever since I was a kid, I could never sit still. I mean, you guys have seen me. I have fidgeted around my chair like crazy. I mean, like, and my hair, I have to like be moving. I just have so much energy.
Yeah.
And that was always my teacher's biggest complaint. That, and I couldn't ever shut up. Like, ever shut up. So I was like destined for the arts. But But yeah, it wasn't until 2 years ago, and it was so relieved.
Yeah.
I could put it in what I was feeling. I could manage it now. There was like, okay, cool. So my depression and anxiety that I'm feeling is because of this. Now let's work on this and actually execute everything I've been wanting to do.
Yeah. Ross, what about you? What was the time?
Yeah, it was pretty long. I think it was around 8, 9 years. And it was especially tough because I think as a Christian early on in high school, I thought that Christians couldn't struggle with depression. And that's just so far from the truth. I know famous pastors and Christians who struggle with depression who have done so much in their life. Yeah, I remember when I first started to accept my diagnosis and accept help, it was just so helpful because I felt freed. Like there was a sense in which there was like a dissonance in my mind of this is who I want to be and this is what I desire, and yet I could never reach it. And I was always so frustrated, like, why can't I get to just get up? Like, how hard is just get up, get out of bed, right? Just do something, right? And there was like this frustration of like not knowing, this frustration of not being in control and not sure why. So it was just so helpful for me to just seek help and just try to understand what's going on with me, understanding my triggers, understanding like kind of how holistic treatment was. So going to counseling and just getting diagnosed, there was just so much freedom for me. So I think that's just so accurate. And I'm surprised. Like, I mean, 0% got it. Like I'm looking at the rating, 0% got it. But I think that's just so, it's really accurate. I mean, in my life and in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah. Angelique?
Outlier in this situation because I started battling with depression at 17. And thankfully, my parents noticed because I was so high performing and always doing well in school and in all of the extracurricular activities. It didn't seem like that was actually a problem, but once they recognized that it was, they were just super supportive and started helping me to facilitate getting help right away.
That's really great. Yeah. Mine was for sure, I mean, one, because I was just so young. Like, everyone just thought I was a crybaby. Like, legit, like, growing up, they just thought, you know, they were just like, oh, she's just really sensitive. She's just a crybaby. So it was like 10 years. Because if I think like, oh, I was 5 when I first really felt the sense that like this was an above average, like my friends weren't having the same sort of emotional experience that I was having, then I would say it was 10 years to like 15 before any like formal treatment or addressing it at all, honestly. That question was, next one, what percentage of lifetime mental illness begins by age 14? And the answer was 50%.
Wow.
50% by age 14. So most folks know before they're 14. The next question is, what mental illness is the leading cause of disability worldwide? Is it 1, post-traumatic stress, PTSD? Is it 2, depression? Or is it 3, bipolar disorder? That's a great question.
Absolutely.
And I have no idea what the answer is.
I'll let it be a surprise for
everyone. Not alone.
I have no clue.
Even going back to the last question about being 14 and struggling with depression, that just makes me sad to think about that 50% started at age 14 when they're in high school and they're just starting to learn about themselves. And
and you don't know what's hormonal. Like you don't know what's what because they're just telling you like, oh, you're a teenager, it's just this, you know. Right, I know that was the case for me, for sure. Mm-hmm. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Depression.
Wow.
Oh, most people thought it was
bipolar
disorder. It's interesting. Last question. You can live with a mental illness and be mentally healthy. Do we think that's true or false? You can live with a mental illness and be mentally healthy. That's a good one. That's a good question. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that's true. Like, it's been true in my life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's been the depression one's surprising only because I feel like I'm surprised that there's infrastructural support for depression specifically. You know what I mean? In terms of like it actually being like when I think about like time off from work and those kind of things, I don't know if the support is there in that respect. You can live with a mental illness and be mentally healthy. True.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's why we're here tonight.
That's why we're here tonight. That's literally why we're here tonight.
Yeah.
We were talking about it earlier, and it's helpful to think about mental illness in the context of like physical health, right? There's like there's just a spectrum. You can be in a moment where you're like doing it and you're on top of it and you're handling it and everything's great and you're like riding a high. Or you can be like, kind of in the midst and the thick of it. And there's also, it's possible to have poor mental health with no mental illness specifically, and it's also possible to have great mental health even with a diagnosis of mental illness, which is what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with over here. We're trying to do our best to stay buoyant. Yeah, right.
And I think
let me
my
go ahead.
ADHD is superpower. I mean, that's what I always say. I'm, again, a mindfulness coach. I have my own company. I'm a comedian. I play piano. I sing. I dance. I act. I'm a presenter for NAMI. I was always a really high achiever. So it's like, yeah, absolutely. I use my ADHD to my benefit. I have so much energy, it makes me compassionate and sympathetic towards others, and like this bubbly, like, light in this room. And I love it personally. Of course, there are days where it's hard to execute some of the biggest things, even managing it. And especially during COVID, I wanted to bring this up because during COVID, probably about like 3 weeks ago, even though I was taking care of my mental health and meditating and managing it with my planners and medication and therapy, I still fell into a week-long depression. And I'm someone who enjoys her work so much that I don't like taking days off, but I know how important that is too. So I realized, though, I'm like, I'm going to take 2 days off. Well, those 2 days turned into 8 days of not showering, of all my dishes piling up. I was ordering pizza. I was pushing my friends away. And I had realized that, I was really seeing what was going on. It's like, oh my gosh, all our healthy coping mechanisms were kind of cut down overnight. Hiking trails, hanging out with friends, performing, going out. And so I'll never forget the moment when I was FaceTiming with my 13-year-old sister. And I remember my hair looked crazy. And I was like, do you like my hair? It's like all over. And she goes, yeah, when's the last time you showered? I'm like, and she goes, wow, you actually have to think about that? I'm like, and she goes, please tell me it was at least like 3 days ago. I'm like, no, I don't remember when's the last time I showered. And that was the moment when I snapped out of it. Well, not snapped out of it, but snapped into it.
Yeah.
So
you felt like it was like part of it was just seeing yourself, so to speak.
But you see, I got out of it, and it's hope. I want to give that hope to others that you don't have to have to define you. And there's moments where, like you said, you're doing great and you're on top of it, and then you'll have moments of backdraft, and that's an actual term of, just regressing into former behaviors. But that doesn't mean you haven't made progress. It just means that you're human.
Yeah, I'm with that. What about you, Ross? How do you feel like this kind of collective stress has impacted your mental health, like routine and coping mechanisms?
Yeah, it's been rough. I think 2 reasons. One, the timing of the whole situation was just really bad, specifically for me, because I'm going to school at CBU, and we're going on break. So they're extending the break to 2 weeks. So there's this time when I don't necessarily have urgent responsibilities. So I'm spending a lot of time just in my bed, and I'm kind of okay with that. Like, there's a part of me that's like, it's okay if I'm on my bed if I don't have to get things done. It's like when I need to get things done and I can't because of my depression, I think that's an issue. So I was in my bed for probably 20 hours a day for 3 weeks. So for those 2 weeks, and then for another week when class started, and I just could not get out of bed. And I was like, what's going on? And then people started texting me, checking up on me because I wasn't showing up to Zoom calls. And yeah, it got really dark because of the timing. And then the second reason was just I'm an extreme extrovert. So I find a lot of my energy from other people.
Right.
Because of COVID and the situation, I wasn't going to work. I work as a waiter, and that gives me energy just talking to people, being around people, having that environment. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't going to class. And it was just so isolating.
Yeah.
And honestly, it got really, really dark for a few weeks, like probably the worst it's been for 3-4 years. Just completely felt out of control, felt frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really until I moved into my sister's house where people were reaching out to me. My sister, I was living with my mom and sister, and they were like not as helpful as my sister is here. So I moved into my sister's house, and she just started giving structure in my life, just being around them. And they would, every night before I go to sleep, I text them telling them what time I need to wake up. And they'll make sure I wake up at that time. They'll come and check on me. I'll send them a list of goals I need to do throughout the day, and they'll celebrate with me. So it's been so helpful. Just yeah.
Andrea says below, Andrea Jackson Slaughter says, I completely understand Ross. I think we talked about this a little yesterday, but I just feel like that balance of, you know, kind of riding the waves of like, okay, you know, I'm good today. It's so important because when I don't have it, I've been warring against that, the need to be productive, right? I feel like all four of us are probably like high performance, you know, which is, it's more common than people realize, but there's also, you know, a danger in like not actually like dealing with our stuff. See, I didn't cuss. There's a danger in not actually addressing. Thank you, Angelique. I need that thumbs up. And not actually like processing our feelings, because if you don't you know, deal with it in the moment and actually address it in the moment, then there's that potential for some real, you know, some real like blowback, so to speak. What about you, Angelique? Same.
My system for managing my mental health was completely uprooted once quarantine and COVID came around, which I had worked so hard to build. And then I felt like in an instant, it was just snatched from me. All of the keeping a regular sleep schedule, keeping a regular daily schedule, going to work, getting up, showering, interacting with people. And opposite from Ross, who's an extrovert, I'm an introvert. So I would go out, I would get my daily daily dose of human interaction and get back in my bubble and be fine. But then you realize how much that's important once it's taken away from you. So this time has been a season of getting very flexible, creative, resilient, and having to essentially redo a lot of that system, finding ways to get up, you know, maintaining certain things. So as far as spiritual life and being a Christian, waking up, praying, reading my Bible, getting the day started, showering every day. I can totally relate. That can sometimes when you get up and you're like, I showered, I'm not in pajamas all day.
Yes.
You're like, I did it.
Put on some of this. It's been a while.
And being kind to myself during this time and being able to give myself pats on the back when, okay, I got up, I meal prep, I ate, I didn't allow things like, you know, I just want to stay in bed and watch TV and not eat and be sad and just wallow in all of my emotions, which is such an easy thing to do as an artist and creative, but you got to get up. So just get up and taking it one day at a time.
Jessica below said balance during this time has been a struggle. I feel like it's
Oh yeah. 100%.
We agree. You know, for me, I had to like even reframe what I think of as balance. Like I feel like if I get one professional thing done a week, I feel accomplished.
Mm.
Absolutely.
That's the bandwidth that I have presently. My other boundary is like I can do one video thing a day, which is like hard. It's probably been hardest on my best friend because ordinarily, like she was so used to FaceTiming every day, but now that I've had to like spread that, because I'm an introvert, like Angelique,
Mhm.
so I have to like really watch my energy.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, like after this, I'm gonna be in the bed. Like this is gonna zap me out.
Extrovert like Ross, like raging extrovert.
Yeah.
So man, I know it's been tough. I went on a walk right before this panel, and I just said hi to everybody I found on the street. I was like, hi, okay.
People are saying hi on these walks. People
Hi.
say hi to me too on these walks, and I'm like, Pasadena's friendly, but Pasadena has never been this friendly, where people are like looking at you through the mask, like, you know.
Another human. Oh my gosh.
DeWanda, stop describing me. Leave me alone, DeWanda. Don't judge me.
I say hi back.
Oh, DeWanda.
What do we want? What do we want our community to know about what it means to live with a mental health illness?
That there's hope, and that it doesn't define you. And it doesn't make you weird. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than. It's, again, 1 in 5 people have a mental illness, and you can be mentally healthy having a mental illness. And I feel like I'm one of those people. I know all of us are. I know there's so many people out there, and we have to realize that we're all a lot more alike than we are different.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to really embrace that. And so, yeah, doesn't make you normal. I mean, doesn't make you normal. Doesn't make you weird. Doesn't make you weak or a freak. It means you're human. You're normal.
I feel like, when I think about it, especially right now, I wish people knew. I feel like for like, especially people of color and like marginalized communities, we were talking about this a little earlier, but it's sometimes, um, there's just like another layer of stigma. And I think that's partially that's why we're all here. We're all here, to some extent to like really um, normalize it, and to kind of sound the alarm on some like tools that we personally use. Um, what about you, Angelique? What do you want our community to know?
I definitely want people to realize that it's especially hard during this time. Check on your friends. Check on your friends constantly. I think setting up weekly calls with people have been helpful. So there are people I talk to literally once a week, and we have a designated FaceTime or Zoom call. Reaching out to people, having empathy for people, especially with mental health challenges during this time, but also realizing that this is a time where a lot of people who don't normally deal with less than stellar mental health are starting to feel that they are becoming disinterested in things that they're normally excited about. They are having a harder time balancing exercise and physical health along with the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, and the financial. Let's not talk about how
Yes,
financial
yes,
is
yeah,
weighing on during this.
yeah. I
So,
mean, that's what I was getting at because there can be there's a real, I'm gonna not, but there's a real compounded strain for a lot of people and a lot of folks in our communities right now, and we were kind of talking about that before. If you're like first gener or, you come from working class families, it's just this compounded kind of stress, you know,
yeah.
and it's, we're all collectively in a moment that's going to be, you know, pretty traumatic. This is a collective trauma, collective grief. And, I think one of my concerns truly, truly, madly, deeply. One of my concerns is, you know, that people who aren't tooled up, people who aren't accustomed to, you know, processing their feelings in this way, you know, it's gonna take years of real work and addressing, and um, you know, and the more that people are kind of like tuning into it now, um, even in the midst of the storm, I think, you know, the better we'll be in the long run in terms of like avoiding a rather major mental health crisis um, after this, you know.
Yeah.
That's kind of related. But what do we feel like our like family, our friends, you know, people we live with, people we don't, what can they do to support our wellness journey? Like what have you all found that's like helpful individually? Start with Ross.
Yeah, I think on my half, it's just being open and being willing to share what's helpful. Because I think for a lot of people who don't struggle with mental health, they just don't understand that struggle of being unable to get out of bed and feeling out of control. So for my family and for my church and for my friends, I just really had to educate them. Like, this is how you be helpful for me. So what I've done with church members is I would set up weekly calls, and if I'm not at a weekly call, they know to check up. But they know to check up because I've taught them that, yeah, I need help and I struggle with this. So check up on me. And now that, okay, so going back, so now that I'm living with my sisters and my brother-in-law, I had to tell them, like, this is what is helpful for me. I need you to celebrate with me. I need you to keep me accountable as I'm working. And I need you to make sure that I wake up at a certain time, that I'm taking a shower, that I'm eating. So now I eat around the table instead of just coming into my own room and eating. Like, those social interactions and that structure and just really educating them on how to help me. I think that's just been so helpful, and they've been so helpful. I've been blessed to have them. They're just so sweet.
My mom just wrote, I love my mom so much. My mom said, I'm in the just leave me alone place these days. And I get that from her. I get that from her through and through. And it's fascinating because I feel like, you know, previously I would need, like, it's like my needs have shifted right now. Like, truly, my needs have shifted.
Yeah.
Before, you know, my husband would actually, if I was like in the thick of it, he would not try to be the hero. He would call my friends up. Like, he's known from the very beginning. You know, we've been married almost 11 years at this point. So he kind of intuitively knows when it's a like, let me just bring her some tea moment. He knows when it's the like, we are not talking today. Today. Shout out to Alano. He just, you know, he kind of like can feel out what I need when, but I found that I really do need more alone time right now, because part of the way that my anxiety and my depression has been manifesting has been with like irritability. Like, I'm far more short. I don't have a lot of patience for small. Already, it's the introvert thing. It's the combination of the introvert meeting the like, you know, the anxiety, where I just don't want to talk about things that I think are not, you know, as pressing on my heart, as, you know, as this moment is. So any of my friends who are like, I'm not reading the news, I don't want to know anything, I can't talk to them because I don't want to hear about your recipes. You know?
DeWanda.
That's just where I'm at.
No, thank you.
No judgment.
Ah,
Where I'm
dude.
at. So if you thought you were going to text me about your recipes, you will not get a response.
Yeah, I would add to that, and to just be compassionate towards your friends. You know, everyone, and because for me also, I was reading one of the comments and it says, yeah, I'm in the just leave me alone place these days. And I remember being in that place, and I had a friend who was constantly, like, every day, like, hey, checking in. Hey, it's like, dude, I need my space.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm okay. Thank you so much for caring, but I really do need my space. had a friend do this a few weeks ago too. She was also pushing everyone away, and I gave her space, but just little tidbits here and there. I would send her a meme, I would just be like, love you, but I wasn't pushing to get in her space. So I think that's also really important, because that will only drive people further away, even if you're just out.
And that's a good point. Like, part of it is ask people what they need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, ask people what they need. I love this very small thing, but even with my friends now, I go, do you need to vent or do you want advice?
Yes. I love it. Yes.
Wisdom of just asking. Yeah.
Yeah, because it changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It could it changes day to day these days, but it changes depending on the season, and that support, what it looks like, whether it's tangible, whether it's a distraction, like you said, like reaching out with like a meme. I have a group chat that's like that. I love a group chat. I love a group chat. I don't have to jump on the phone with you.
Yeah.
I think we've been blessed during this time to have such a supportive community who have been checking on me. And like you said, simply having people to ask, what do you need right now? How can I love you well? My family has done such a great job at that. They're on the call too. My mom is out there watching, and she's just and has been a blessing, just FaceTiming me and making sure she's being attentive to my needs during the time, and vice versa. I think sometimes that helps a lot, allowing us to be there for you and not treating me particularly like some, I don't know, person who just needs constant attention and love, but also I have things to give and things to offer, and I can listen to you and hear about your day. So allowing it to go both ways and not make it feel worse than they probably already feel.
Yeah, because it can become really compounded, because then, I don't know about you guys, but there's like the feeling that you feel, and then there's like, there can be the guilt on top of it.
Oh yeah.
For not being able to like either perform optimally or return all the calls and texts, and in a way that you would have. I'm not as responsive as I normally am. Like, normally I'm like super like crazy responsive. And I think also knowing, because all of you too, that kind of processing, is really important. It can be really important. We all still here?
Sorry, cut up a little bit, but we're good. Yeah.
Mine cut out a little bit too.
Yeah. I think along with that, I think when you said something that was really helpful in terms of like, for the parents and the friends and the family that's out there. I mean, the truth is to expect a little less in terms of maybe how fast we respond when you guys text us. Like, the reality is, I really want to text you back, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling. So I mean, lower the expectations, and I think that just helps a lot, even with my guilt. Like, I don't want to be at a place where I feel guilty for not responding to the 10 messages of people who care and love for me. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's in a way it's helpful. I think all the small messages are helpful in like bringing me over to a place where I'm like slowly getting back to health. But at the same time, like, text the messages, but don't necessarily expect to respond. Maybe sometimes don't ask a question, just send a short encouragement. And I think my church has been really helpful in doing that. And I'm just so thankful for the community that's around me.
Yeah. Early on, I actually got, it was so funny. It was, remember like chain emails?
Yeah.
It was just like a simple, like, chain. I know you're probably too young. Stop it, Ross. He's like, what?
I think that was like 5-10. Is that 5-10 years ago? Are we talking about the same thing, sister?
Blog or chat room. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm probably thinking about something different.
But it was really brilliant, because it was like, all you had to do was one where, you sent your favorite poem, or like your favorite, quote. And it was something lovely because it wasn't invasive, but it was still, emotionally edifying. I really loved that. I was like, look at you trying to bring back the chain email. 2020. Let's talk about stigma a little bit. Like what you do in your own like personal circles to break stigma, what you are doing or hope to do on a larger scale to break stigma.
Well, for me, on my Instagram, Sweet Thoughts Travel, I'm always posting about mental health statistics, mindfulness statistics, little mindfulness exercises here and there. I'm also posting like funny mental health videos where it's called therapy time. And so you'll see me going into my therapist's office, like jamming to my favorite songs and, with little quotes at the bottom. I'm obsessed with Skittles too. So when I go to my therapist's office and I don't see Skittles, I'm the first one to put in that video, like, damn, no Skittles today. This is messy. I don't want to anymore because I want my Skittles. So I do that. And I'm always talking about it all the time. And it's so important, that's how we're going to break the stigma and end this, by talking about it, by not shutting up about it. And
Yeah. That's really funny. My therapist has a candy thing too. And every time I go in, she knows like right now, I'm like obviously was supposed to be working on this thing where I'm like supposed to be fit. So whenever I would come in and she'd be like, here's candy, I was like, why do you hate me? Why do you want me to lose my job?
I can't. Is that because my therapist has Skittles? Well, not Skittles, but candy too. And is that like a encouragement to go to therapy? Like, yeah, this is. I guess it's common.
That's so funny. I like this comment a lot. Someone said everyone has something to deal with, and they were just talking about living with bipolar disorder for 46 years. I think, what you were talking about earlier, Brenda, just thinking about it, because my depression is absolutely tied to having like a ton of empathy, like a ton of empathy. It started, I wouldn't have realized it if it wasn't for like, I could hear a story, it could be a news story, it could be a family story, and it could break my heart, and just that, awareness that there's a collective, there's a collective, human experience. I mean, it's been pretty radical, honestly, to just even think about people who are like protesting right now and really angry. And I'm like, they're grieving too.
Yeah.
They're grieving too, you know?
Absolutely. Just what Monique said on the Facebook live stream, she talked about the strong Black woman stereotype and how it impacts our ability to manage and communicate our mental health. And I love that because I think that's a lot of the work that I do towards breaking the stigma, being open about it, sharing about it on social media, personally with different people, and the people that I know intimately in my life and who know what depression and anxiety has looked like along my journey and how I got to such a healthy place managing it. I think they're very attentive to that. And it starts with being honest with yourself that you are not Superwoman. You cannot do it all. I will not always be in a place of doing a million things, juggling a million things, being at every event, being at every Zoom call, being on social media and posting constantly. I think that's a big one as well. We're in a time where posting on social media and posting your highlight reels, if you're not very active, something must be wrong. No, detach, get off the news, get off social media, and just sit with yourself. Journal. Just take a moment to be in your thoughts. How am I feeling? How can I communicate with others right now how I'm feeling? And I think normalizing some language around it, being able to say to certain people, I am not feeling well, or I do not have the emotional capacity for that right now, or I'm not emotionally up to it, or mentally up to it, and allowing people in your life, especially your loved ones, to be okay with that.
Yeah. Star, I love you, Star. She said she loves her solitude. This is too much alone time. So she appreciates her daily calls from her check-in friend. I feel like, is that your best friend? She has a really great best friend. Star, I call Star my first fan. Yeah, support is so important. And I echo what you said, Angelique. I feel like I realized actually this was, so much of what my career has been was an acknowledgement of a lot of our cinematic icons were just so like, it'd be like Claire Huxtable or bust, and when you come from a marginalized community, that kind of weight of representation is like so strong, and they want to make sure we're like putting our best face forward, and that requires, unfortunately, a certain degree of like masking, so a lot of my work professionally, kind of rather organically, to be honest with you, is just about, broken human beings, women living with and living through trauma and traumatic experiences, and just kind of, the full expression of humanity beyond just, success and looking great in every frame, and all these things that we are honestly culturally kind of like bound and burdened by to an extent. So I do believe in a degree of like lead by example, and that's how like my personal mode of trying to normalize humanity, really, but mental health illness specifically. Sure. What about you, Ross?
Yeah, I think killing stigma for me, what that looks like in a personal level is just being really vulnerable with people. My personality is very outgoing. I'm a lot to handle sometimes. If people know me, I often at the end of the day my cheeks will be sore because I've been smiling so much. And it's just hard because when I tell people I struggle with depression, they're just so surprised. Like, you are the last person I thought would struggle with depression, is what so many of them say. And I think just being vulnerable and being honest with what I struggle with and how I can still be extremely happy and extroverted and yet have dark moments. Like, that's not a dichotomy in my head. So on a personal level, it's just being really vulnerable, being really honest, using my voice, using my story. I trust that God is a good author, and He's given me depression, and I use my weakness to encourage others. I think on a more larger scale, I speak for In Your Own Voice with NAMI, and that's just been so helpful. I've been able to go to churches and hospitals and schools and just share my story, get 10, 15 minutes sharing my story and going through a video, having a partner sharing their story, and then asking questions and having back and forth and interaction. Like, I've just seen, I think churches can just grow so much from learning more about mental illness. I'm sure 1 out of 5 people are affected by mental illness, and that includes churches,
Yes,
and schools. So,
yeah, and it's like, alongside the faith practice, right?
yeah.
Because we talked a little bit about that earlier, but that kind of that practice of, like you said, Angelique, of waking up in the morning, you know what I mean? And like stilling the mind, the time we spend meditating, all that, in addition to other resources, like reducing the stigma of like medication, you know? Like I was saying earlier, I took a beta blocker before this. This makes me nervous. This, I don't even have to see anyone but your your 3 like beautiful faces, but this alone, like, so just reducing.
And that's scary, but it's also so empowering,
Yeah.
And I was seeing a comment right now that said my birth village isn't supportive, so I've created my own support system. And I can relate 100% to that. Coming from a Mexican household where I shouldn't have been allowed to complain about anything because I had a roof over my head and I had food on the table. It was a big struggle to try and get my family and parents to understand mental illness and depression and anxiety And so with that said, again, I can relate 100%. I have created my own beautiful little universe with beautiful friends who are so supportive, people that are going to be receptive, because my family relationship is strained. And it's because I studied psychology in school. Again, I have a mindfulness coaching business. And to them, they see that as, no, we know about what life is, and mental illness isn't real, and just pray it away. And it's like you can't just pray mental illness away. Like, that's not how it's the mental health world. It's so, yeah, I can totally to that.
Yeah. Lauren said, make a list of your friends. Don't be afraid to tell them what you're dealing with. Good friends understand, and start calling them. I really like that one. Actually, at the back of my journal, I have a list of things that lift my spirit, because I forget. It's like when I'm in a sadness vortex, all of a sudden I do not know what to do or how to live. And so I just like created a cheat sheet of, like, you know what I mean? Like, take a bath, like you said earlier, like get in the shower, like I created a kind of a quick cheat sheet for myself. What can we do? What can our communities do, rather? What would we suggest to help break stigma? Because it's one thing for the kind of community who's impacted, right? That 1 in 5, but then there's 4 out of 5 folks who don't, who can be, helping us stomp the yard. So how do we think that those folks can help?
Like coping mechanisms, is that what you're?
I don't know. I think I immediately thought of like my mom. My mom is a lay minister in the United Methodist Church in Maryland, and her being my mom, she's kind of been such a megaphone, for what it actually is, for the experience, for what it looks like on the ground. It's my experience has helped her understand her experience, her internal life in a way, and so I think that kind of proximity, has served to like amplify, um, what the nuances of the experience are.
Yeah. So the question was
Educated about it. So the question was basically, what can the larger community, those 4 and 5 who don't personally deal with mental illness, but may know someone who does deal with it, what can they do to help break the stigma?
Yeah.
Taking the time to get educated about it, especially the symptoms, because there may be people in your circle who are dealing with it that you may not realize. But if you take a time to say, hey, I haven't heard from that person in a while, or last time I spoke to them, they didn't seem as excited about things, or they told me they didn't eat today. Just learning what some of those symptoms are for the depression and anxiety, especially from people who may have it in your life. I think that's so huge. Education is just key with this. Not pretending it doesn't exist and it doesn't happen, having to wait for news stories where things have reached such a large scale that, oh, wow, it is real, and thinking it's so removed from you, because it's not. You either know someone, or someone you know someone who is dealing with it. So taking the time to get educated, being empathetic about it, just being willing to listen, being willing to say, I don't know how you feel, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to try to put myself in your shoes. And I think those are just really helpful.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. I think education, in a real way, it goes a long way. I try to describe, even to my husband, that sometimes for me it literally feels like a physical weight, like it feels like a physical compression on my body. And the more specific I've gotten about the description, and the more people can kind of, to your point, play WebMD if they're noticing, somebody's behavior change. I think that can go a long way. I think we have some time for audience questions. So if there are any, let's see what the people want to know. Question: what is the most pleasant, easiest, best thing about living with a mental health condition? Oh, that's a good question. I like it.
Yeah. I'll go first. I love how creative my ADHD makes me. I'm so again, like, I have so much energy, and I love tapping into my piano, my singing, my dancing, and my acting. So for me, it just like allows me to do all of those things without getting tired. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I love it.
I would definitely agree. I think that's been the most pleasant or fun, being able to tap into characters who deal with those dark, traumatic experiences and be able to say, hey, I know what that feels like, using it to fuel my acting and my creative writing and giving me an outlet to, I guess, chart my system around as well, knowing that I have to send out emails to potential commercial agents or do things to keep me creative and to keep me occupied so I don't sink into an idle place of, I have nothing to do, so I'm just going to lay here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm not an actor, so I don't have that card to pull. But I think the best thing for me is just it really taught me to be empathetic. I echo DeWanda. I think there's so many times where people would just share a story, and if they're crying and I'm hearing the story, I'll just start. I just can't help myself. Like the pain in my life, the deep pain in my life. Honestly, there's been so many dark moments where I felt like I just don't even know what I'm gonna do next. Like I don't even know why I'm still alive. I mean those deep pains start bubbling up, and I just empathize so much better. And not only that, it just taught me to be patient. Like people were so patient with me. I remember just sitting in the car, like hanging on the seatbelt and just kind of crying. Like my friends would take me out, and I wouldn't even talk. Like I'm just sitting there crying for 10 minutes.
Yes.
There's nothing I could do. But it was so helpful, and now it just teaches me to be patient with others. Like all I need to do sometimes is just sit there and be with them, and that was helpful for me. It just teaches me, man, I can be patient with others, as they were patient with me.
You mentioned the educating yourself when we were talking about stigma a little bit, Angelique. And for me, I feel like I've my way. Actually, I realized when I was about like in middle school, right? And it was because I just started clocking my family members going through things and just being like, just noticing a lot of, because there's undiagnosed for sure in my family, right? And so before I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a therapist. And that kind of started a lifelong love of learning about the human mind, of learning about, the nervous system. And so I think one of my favorite things and one of the most pleasant things is, it's built a lot of self-awareness and human awareness. And, I just kind of turned it into like, a nerdy passion, in addition to something that would keep me like tooled up.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have one more, or time for one more, I should say. No more questions?
It says, what resources or help do you wish you had when you were younger and struggling? I like that question from Facebook.
What resources do you wish you had when you were younger
And struggling.
I think it's kind of funny now, but my family really just didn't know what to do. I had like no no idea. So, and to your point, and the three of us were talking about it, and even Ross, I feel like, were you in like music or like the arts at all?
The speeches count. I did. I had a minor in speech. I did communications. Yeah, I did speech tournaments. I'm a nerd like that a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of it too. No judgment. Yeah, no, that was huge. I just feel like the arts were a tremendous outlet. I don't want to go over time because after this there is another event from We Rise. So I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Angelique. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, everybody at home, for joining us today. And, you know, if you are struggling right now, be sure to thank yourself, because we know how much energy it takes to reach out to do even this. So thank you for joining us today. Also, while you're here, be sure to go to NAMI at NAMI GLAC on social, so you can check out more resources. They have like virtual support groups, which is really dope. And also you can check out WeRise.LA for more incredible programming throughout the month of May. WeRise has provided like this fantastic forum, not only for NAMI, but a number of other mental health organizations, and we're really thankful that they do. And lastly, if you are not suffering right now, but someone came to mind, reach out to them.
Yeah.
Reach out to them this week. Check in with them, please. All those small steps really, really, really add up to major leaps. And remember to take care of yourselves and each other as much as possible. Thank you.
You.
Bye, new friends.
Bye. DeWanda, you're so much fun. Can we just thank DeWanda? DeWanda, how are you so much fun?